Giza pyramids and Great Sphinx. Underwater. Shells found firmly embedded in the Sphinx wall. We all wish we could go and examine with our own eyes, but we do have a viewer that sent us his pictures. He went recently, November of 2019, and I thank him so much. It's from Tim Green. These are his pictures. It's a beautiful picture of the Sphinx, the Great Sphinx. The left paw, between the left and the right paw, we see the stele in the middle of it. And we'll see him with his son standing right at the stele. As we know, there's water erosion. There he is with his son. Two handsome specimens. Thank you, Tim, so much. And we're going to see the seashells as well that they found embedded in the wall next to the Sphinx. So how could seashells get in there? Well, we know that the Giza Sphinx, the Great Sphinx, was found covered up with its neck at the time of Napoleon's visit. Here we have the seashells. As you can see, they're all over. And this must be logically from the time of the Great Flood. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below, which covered the whole earth. You can imagine the overwhelming destruction and catastrophe. So obviously this thing is this massive change of the Giza Plateau was devastating. Now we know that we have the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean, telling us that he was the one that built the Giza Plateau. The Atlanteans were also gigantic in stature. We even have the Native American Indians telling us of the star people, the sky people. They called them the Anu, their great friends. Very coincidental Anu or Anunnaki. We even have the ancient Greeks that had their gods coming from elsewhere with superhuman talents. And we've even seen various strange craft around us and around our sun. And we have the Tully Papyrus witnessed by one of the last pharaohs of Egypt saying that the sky gods, the overlords of Egypt, he had witnessed himself landing over the pyramids onto the Giza Plateau. The overlords of Egypt. And he, who was considered a god, king, pharaoh, was in awe and trembling with fear when these overlords of Egypt, these sky gods, landed. And here we have partially uncovered Sphinx in the beginning of the 19th century. You can understand the devastation, how all of this was covered up to its neck with sand. Before that, there was also erosion. So, what's going on there? It seems that the more we talk about the Giza Plateau, the more questions arise. When were the pyramids and the Sphinx of Giza built? Well, the mainstream says about 4,000 years ago, but it seems that they were much older than this, 4,000 BC, sorry. So they seem to be much older than that. Now, researchers indicate there's enough evidence to suggest that the Giza Plateau, especially by looking at the Sphinx, was heavily flooded in the past, because evidence found around the Giza Plateau, the pyramids and the Sphinx, as we saw now with the seashells, could show that some kind of great deluge overtook this area. They were already there before the flood, that is. This is pre-flood construction. Now, our friend Tim Green with his son and a group of people, when they went there November 2019, they went with a group with Hugh Newman, he says, and we thank him again. I'll leave a link below for you. He says more pictures on Facebook. So I'll try to find that and leave that for you as well. But we still have absolutely no clue exactly who erected the pyramids, even though the emerald tablets are written by Thoth the Atlantean. He calls himself an Atlantean. He says that before Atlantis sunk, there were a few Atlanteans who went to various parts of the world, and the first thing they did was establish cities with pyramids, and we know we have them all over the place. North, south, east, west. We have them in Teotihuacan, we have them in China, we have them in Greece, of course, we have them in Egypt, we have them in the Nubian pyramids, we have the American pyramids. Now, while questions remain unanswered about the Great Pyramid of Giza, we're still perplexed by the precision of the ancient structures. It's supposedly built on the greatest landmass, which is also tied into the speed of light. The intersection of longitude and latitude is also tied in with the speed of light. And why is that? How is that possible? Did they create the landmasses that there and put the pyramids there at exactly the cross section of the greatest landmass of the world, which happens to be the speed of light? That is just mind-boggling. So more questions arise. Now, Dr. Robert Schoch was one of the first researchers to look into this as to when the structures were built. And in the early 90s, Dr. Schoch suggested that the Sphinx was thousands of years older than archaeologists believe. He believes that they date back to 5,000 to 9,000 BC. We know we had a supposed comet strike, the Younger Dryas, at 12,800 years ago. So maybe that was around this time. Who knows? But Dr. Schoch says he suggests it's the erosion patterns of the water found, especially on the Sphinx and the surrounding rocks, suggest that it's that old. He's not the only one to suggest this. Looking at the evidence of the Sphinx, archaeologist Sherif El Morsi suggests that the Giza Plateau was again once flooded by a surge. The temple site in Mamkare, in particular, he says, may have been a former lagoon when the sea levels covered the necropolis and the Sphinx and the complex of temples and pyramids and other monuments of the area. He says, during one of the documentations of the ancient coastline, I almost tripped with a block of the second level of a temple. And he says, to my surprise, the bump on the top surface of the block that almost tripped me was, in fact, an exoskeleton of a fossil that appeared to be a sea urchin, which are marine creatures, as we know. They live in shallow waters, the sea urchins. A lot of people eat them. They consider them delicacy. Now, El Morsi believes that the flooding was quite huge, significant, and that it was about above 75 meters, let's say over 240 feet above the current sea level, 240 feet, and created a coastline spanning the Khufu Khafra enclosure and the Sphinx and the Temple of Menkaure. He also suggests there is evidence that the monuments and surrounding blocks indicate the presence of tidal waters in the past, and even suggests the intertidal zone of about 6 to 7 feet high. Now, according to Manichev and Pakhomenko, the problem of dating the great Egyptian Sphinx of the Giza Plateau is valid despite long-term history of its research. Geological approach in connection to other scientific natural methods permits to answer the question about the relative age of the Sphinx. The conducted visual investigation of the Sphinx allowed the conclusion about the important role of the water from large water bodies, which partially flooded this monument with the formation of wave-cut hollows in its vertical walls. Now, Manichev and Parkhomenko believe that the Sphinx had to be submerged for a very long time underwater, and to support this theory, they point towards existing literature of geological studies of the Giza Plateau. And I have to admit, I did not do any geological studies, but they did, and they say, according to Manichev and Parkhomenko, it's the sea level during the Calabrian phase, which is the closest to the present mark, with the highest GES hollow at its level. High level of seawater also caused the Nile overflowing and created long-living water bodies. As to time, it corresponds to 800,000 years. So 800,000 years. While many people oppose the theories of Soch and Manichev and Parkhomenko, others believe that these magnificent advanced technology monuments in the Giza Plateau are evidence of pre-flood construction built by entirely different civilizations, predating civilizations which inhabited the land of the pharaohs, of course, possibly even before the Great Flood, described in the Holy Bible and other texts. And while many people are against their ideas, not believing them, disbelieving them, that the Great Flood existed on Earth, researchers estimate that in the last 140,000 years, sea levels fluctuated by over 120 meters. That's over 350 feet in different parts of the world. So, obviously, the existence of seashells there, they were not put there for decoration, obviously. They were embedded, as you can see from the pictures, as you can see here, haphazardly because of the fact that they were brought in and brought in as sediment onto the wall that existed there. So we thank our friend and viewer. Thank you so much, Tim, for going into the trouble and giving us your beautiful pictures. And hopefully you will go back to your traveling. And I know you love archaeology because you went there, obviously. Thank you for giving us your beautiful images. And here, here we have in Latin America. Look at the advanced technology that they had there. Amazing. Amazing. And this was one of the reasons Thoth the Atlantean said Atlantis found its demise. They were abusing their knowledge, their high technology. They even had knowledge of interdimensional switching frequencies. We're all frequencies. We're just space in between our atoms. Just our frequency here is different. But they were able to switch frequencies. And they got into a lot of trouble from that because they were bringing in demonic entities to the demise of the planet and humanity. We know that the ancient Greeks knew of Atlantean technology too. They were supposedly inhabiting, the Atlanteans were inhabiting a place in the Arctic called Hyperborea. Not Hypernautia, which is south, but Hyperborea meaning north. And an Atlantean had come from the north to give a special gift to Alexander the Great. He brought him a high technology weapon, a laser mechanism called the lightning rod of Zeus. And this Atlantean came to, well, he came even before Alexander the Great. He came to meet other ancient Greeks, but the copy of the lightning rod of Zeus is kept in a Buddhist monastery in the Himalayas. And here it is coming up now. This is it. This is it. And they would hold it from the middle, and there would be sparks, some kind of things. This is Alexander the Great. And this is a copy of the lightning rod of Zeus in a Nepal Buddhist monastery. And he went all the way to the end of China, across the sea from Japan, and his generals hid it there. And they left a copy, and it's found at the Buddhist monastery, supposedly coming from Hyperborea. which were Atlanteans. So it's still a mystery, but the fact that we found the seashells there definitely show that this thing was underwater for a very long time. This thing was not a desert, and something happened and the water receded. Earth changes, of course, and it left the sediment of the seashells there. So we could appreciate how this part of the world changed so radically and how old it must be. So we thank you, Tim Green, and thank you all for your support. Please leave your comments and any ideas. And if you've been there, please let us know what you saw. Thank you so much for your support.